While in Washington, subpoenas are going out to Biden family members and associates over the House Oversight Committee's allegations of influence peddling and potential bribery by Joe Biden and family, while doing deals with foreigners in countries across the world, including China, while Joe was vice president. Joining me right now with more on all of this in a Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. He sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee and Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Maria. It's good to be back on with you.
I want to get your assessment of the meeting between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping, and also on this propaganda war. Do you agree with that?
Very much so, Maria. First off, there's a lot we still don't know about the summit. You outlined some of the initial obvious problems, is that we gave concrete concessions to China, like lifting sanctions against entities and persons involved in genocide against religious and ethnic minorities in China. China only gave us promises. For instance, the promise to stop shipping precursor chemicals for deadly fentanyl to Mexico. That's probably about as valuable as Xi Jinping's promises to Joe Biden's old boss, Barack Obama, that China would stop cyber attacks or that they wouldn't put rockets and missiles on the islands they built in the South China Sea. I'm also worried about just the overall demeanor and attitude that Joe Biden had at that summit. It's one thing to meet with our communist adversaries. That's what we expect our leaders to do. I do that on occasion on trips around the world. It's another thing for Joe Biden to say that it was an honor and a pleasure to welcome a communist dictator like Xi Jinping to America. That's not the kind of thing Ronald Reagan would have said when he brought Mikhail Gorbachev to the White House. I also noted that you had John Kerry there, whose monomaniacal obsession is some fleeting climate change deal with China, but you didn't have representatives of the Department of Defense or our intelligence agencies at a high level. So I worry very much about the mood music that Joe Biden was trying to set at this summit and the signals that it'll send to Xi Jinping as he takes the measure of a man he may have to face off against sometime in the near future in a conflict over Taiwan.
Yeah,
now,
so
as for TikTok,
yeah.
I've long said that we should ban TikTok, and I think the last few weeks have shown why it's so urgent that we ban it. It's not just that it puts the data privacy and security of all Americans at risk, but now it's turned into a propaganda machine for Chinese communists. A good rule of thumb in these situations is that if we wouldn't have let communist Russia do it in the Cold War, we shouldn't let communist China do it now, because you've seen TikTok used to stoke these anti-Semitic pro-Hamas rallies. You even mention how TikTok boosted videos saying that Osama bin Laden had a point about attacking America on 9/11. Just imagine what TikTok would do if we ever came to blows with China over Taiwan. So if Congress passes a major aid bill next month for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan to secure our border, we should also include a flat-out ban on TikTok in America as well.
Well, is it not extraordinary that you're calling for a flat-out ban, as are so many governors, by the way, across the country, banning TikTok, certainly from their state governments of using it. But at the same time, Joe Biden and the Democrats want to use TikTok for their campaigning for the upcoming election.
Yeah, Maria, it's not just that governors have banned it. Joe Biden has banned it. We passed legislation last year that banned TikTok on U.S. government devices. Yet Joe Biden's campaign is now thinking, apparently, about going on to TikTok. So just think about that. You have all of these senior aides at the White House who carry two phones, one government phone on which they can't download TikTok, and one personal campaign phone in which they'll be obsessively checking TikTok to look at Joe Biden's campaign account. This has probably resulted in part from Joe Biden's polling collapse, especially among young voters or other core Democratic constituencies. The campaign is desperate to do anything, even use a Chinese propaganda app to try to offset Joe Biden's decline in the polls. Joe Biden's campaign shouldn't do it, and President Biden should sign a total ban of TikTok into law next month.
Yeah, I mean, the issues that you raise are so important in terms of that mood music, as you put it, around the Xi-Joe meeting. Nobody from the Defense Department sitting at that table, even as U.S. troops and our bases have been attacked 60 times just in the last few weeks. What should be the response here? Again, no issue around this brought up, even as China supports Iran and Russia.
Yeah, Maria, it's a good point that what you've seen with TikTok over the last few days makes it clear that TikTok is not just going to be used to promote communist China, but to undermine the United States and our friends at every turn. It's going to happen in Israel. It's happening here at home as well. And Iran has attacked American forces more than 60 times in just the last month. That makes probably more than 125 times since Joe Biden took office. But in the last month alone, more than 60 times. We've only hit back 3 times. We've only hit back against sites that are either empty or only has Iran's proxies, not, for instance, their Revolutionary Guard Corps shock troops. Obviously, this is doing nothing to scare or deter the Ayatollahs. It's only emboldening them because after every one of those 3 strikes, they've only hit back harder against our troops. We're going to have a mass casualty attack against the United States forces in the Middle East unless President Biden scares the Ayatollahs straight. And the only way to do that is to target what they hold most dear. For instance, when Ronald Reagan sank half of Iran's Navy in 1988, after they had struck a U.S. Navy vessel, or when Donald Trump killed their terrorist mastermind, Qasem Soleimani, in Iraq in 2020. Until we target Iran's own people and assets, the Ayatollahs will not be scared of killing Americans.
Why is this president so soft on our adversaries, Senator?
Well, I think Joe Biden's been wrong about nearly every major foreign policy and national security decision going back now 50 years when Barack Obama's own Secretary of Defense, Bob Gates, said that about him. It was 10 years ago, so you can add another 10 years. He's consistently appeased and conciliated our adversaries. He's granted them one-sided concessions just because of his bad judgment and his ideological aversion to American strength and confidence. I also think you have to question whether or not Joe Biden is concerned about his ties to a country like communist China. It's an undisputed fact that the Biden family has earned millions, maybe tens of millions of dollars from communist China-linked enterprises and also from other countries all around the world. So in addition to Joe Biden's ideological weakness, I think we also have legitimate questions that need to be answered about whether Joe Biden is compromised by his family's dealings with some of these American adversaries.
Yeah, which is why I ask the question often, what does Beijing have on Joe Biden? We have heard, obviously, from the House Oversight Committee, they are sending subpoenas out right now for Hunter Biden and family associates. How do they get away with accepting millions of dollars and setting up 20 shell companies to confuse how the money is moving, ultimately landing in Biden family accounts? How are they getting away with that while Joe Biden was vice president?
Well, I think there wasn't much scrutiny, especially during the times in which the Congress was in Democratic hands. And I also think that many people just didn't believe that a sitting vice president could be so reckless. Now, of course, this doesn't just happen in the 8 years of his vice presidency. It happened in his decades in the U.S. Senate as well. And it wasn't just his son. The entire Biden family has been enriching itself on Joe Biden's public office for decades. If they did that when he was in the Senate and it was in the vice presidency, do we really think they would stop when he held the highest office in the land? I commend the House for this investigation. I hope that they get to answers sooner rather than later, because the American people deserve to know exactly what Joe Biden's family was doing when he was when he was vice president, and perhaps what they're still doing while he's president.
Yeah, by the way, we don't know if it's still going on because we don't know who's buying Hunter Biden's art. Who's paying all the millions or the hundreds of thousands of dollars for this art from Hunter Biden? Is that one way that he could be continuing this influence peddling?
Well, I think it's safe to say, Maria, if you've seen those pieces of art, it's not art connoisseurs with exquisite taste. So I think you raise a good question about who's paying millions of dollars for Hunter Biden's finger painting. And again, if his family and Joe Biden did it for decades in the Senate and for 8 years as vice president, do we really think they would stop when he got the most powerful office in the land?
Senator, thank you. We're going to be watching your efforts to ban TikTok in the coming weeks. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. And to you, happy Thanksgiving. Senator Tom Cotton.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.